That's it, right? March 20th. March 20th event on Bull Shoals. First of all, probably a lot of you, from what I'm hearing, have not been to the actual Bull Shoals Marina itself down there. How many of you boaters have been there? No? Okay. I want to give you a heads up and the best way to prepare for that. And first of all, get yourself a slip the night before. If you got a motel there at the Bull Shoals, it comes with a slip. So you're going to want to do that. So when you get to the Bull Shoals ramp, a lot of people freak out because there's only places for like 3 cars there. Okay? But what they don't realize is there's another ramp inside of there. You just got to go around a little cove, and that holds like 40 or 50 over there. And you can launch over there. It's still in the same cove. And then they park you around the backside of the marina on a long 1/4 mile road. They run you in and then turn you around. So don't freak out when you get there. There's plenty of parking. They have 300 boat tournaments out of there every year. Every event I've ever ran out of there has been out of there on Bull Shoals. Every tournament I've ever ran. So they'll make it work. The East Walls are the best to work with of anywhere I've ever been. They're a good family and run operation, and they got a really nice tackle store there too. So, and they can help you out. And so March 20th, when you go down there, it's all going to be weather related, but there's several different patterns that will work. The number one bait that I would hope the weather worked for would be a wiggle wart. And that time of year, I mean, we're basically 3 weeks out from it right now. Unless we have something really change in the weather, you're going to be all right on a wiggle wart. Choose a favorite color you like. I like the browns on it, and you don't want to go real fast on the wiggle wart this time of year. But a lot of people don't like throwing it when it's really cold, but the best wiggle wart fisherman ever was a gentleman named Dave Barker, and he won more money than anybody in the Midwest in tournaments. And they even named one of the wiggle wart colors after him. Most people do. It's called Dave Barker Brown, which is this one right here. I saw him win a tournament at Lake of the Ozarks, and he was throwing the wiggle wart up on the ice and reeling it off of it. And he won that tournament doing that. You just have to slow down. And in my books that I was going through for the contest I got going on today out there, another one was where he won it on Table Rock, and it was the first weekend of March. No, it's Bull Shoals, and he only had 4 fish. They weighed 15 pounds, but he caught all of them on a wiggle wart. So when you get down there on the 20th, that wiggle wart is what I would key on. And you're going to want to key on, y'all know what spawning pockets are, okay? The boaters will know, the spawning pockets. Well, the fish are going to be about 2 weeks to 2.5 weeks out of spawn at that point. Generally on Table Rock, they go in the beds on tax day, which is April 15th. Bull Shoals is a tiny bit ahead, a few days. So you're going to want to key on the closest point to a spawning pocket. It doesn't have to be a big long point. It can be just any outcropping on the bank, okay? And some of them so subtle that you would have to stand on the bank physically and look down and see where it was. But that is a point to that fish. And in reverse of that, when it becomes spawning season, any indentation is a spawning area for fish. Most people go into these big coves and they look for these big, spawning areas, and that's great. They hold more fish in there, that they miss just that little bitty indentation, and those are the ones that I key on first because I know they've been passed right by. Well, that outcropping right there, as small as it may be, is a holding area for that fish to go spawn. And your best bet is to find banks that have ledge rock or any kind of bigger rock on them. The whole pea gravel thing will take place in a few weeks after that. But ledge rocks and the bigger rocks is what you want. And you really want wind. That's going to help a lot. And you just run this bait to where it gets on the bottom, and then you just reel it back slow. And as Dave Barker said, most of his bites he doesn't feel on that bait. You will always feel that bait coming through the water because it does just what is called a wiggle wart. But if you ever don't feel that, that's because that fish has his mouth around it, okay? So that's when you set the hook. You won't feel a big thump or anything like that on a wiggle wart most of the time. So that's where you gotta be focused. Like Chevy Chase said, be the bait, be the bait. Except I think he said be the ball or something. You gotta really focus on it. If I was fishing this tournament with 2 people in the boat, I would have one person in the front with a wiggle wart. And the first thing you do when you pull up to a bank is you're trying to feel these fish out and figure out at what depth they are. Because this bait here, this is the new one, it goes deeper, but generally your wiggle wart fish are gonna be in that 8 foot or less. So you wanna approach that bank to begin with, not straight on. You wanna approach it at a 45. That way you can cast shallow, deeper, deeper, and deeper, and don't move your boat. Make those casts until you learn those fish. Because if it's up here, or here, or here that you got that bite or got that fish, pretty much unless there's a major weather change that day, they're gonna be there all day. So what that puts you in position to do is now you get over and you cast straight down the bank at that depth. And that keeps your bait in that strike zone where they're at a longer period of time. Whereas if you 45, you just cross it, okay? So you wanna go over, once you learn the fish, you gotta learn their depth on it. I doubt they're gonna be in a foot of water. Most likely you're gonna catch them in that 6 to 10 foot range in that area. That's what the guy in the front of the boat's gonna do. The guy in the back of the boat, or the girl in the back of the boat, my bad, is gonna be throwing a jerkbait, okay? And that jerkbait, as he figures out up front where he's gonna sit and start going down that bank, that jerkbait's gonna go straight behind as far as you can cast. And on a spinning reel, if you use a jerkbait on a spinning reel, and a lot of the guys that win money do, they just don't tell you. You can cast them a long way. And you can work that bait behind them, okay? You just reel it 3 or 4 times, get it down there, and then twitch, wait 5 seconds to do it again. Now, if you've thrown that out there and you've twitched it, and then immediately your line takes off, that tells me the rest of the day I don't have to wait 5 seconds, okay? Because that fish is active, and so you throw it out, twitch, then you reel up your slack, then you do it again, okay? Let the fish tell you what they want. Let them tell you what they want. On that bait, on this bait to begin with, I would throw 10-pound fluorocarbon line. I would not throw monofilament myself, 10-pound fluorocarbon. If you do throw monofilament, go to 8, because you want the bait to get down, and monofilament floats and fluorocarbon doesn't. So that's what I would do, okay? On the jerk bait, I would throw it on 8-pound fluorocarbon as well. And the jerk bait that you need to use is completely whatever you feel comfortable with. I like the Rapala X-Wraps, and I also like those expensive ones, the Megabass. I like those, and I swear by them, I really do. But that's what I would do in this tournament, especially if there's wind, especially. And in fact, you need to search for the wind. If you don't have any where you are, try to search for the wind. So drive across the lake, go down the cove, try to find, even if it's just a little breeze. If that's not possible, those same points that you fished that wiggle wart or that jerk bait, you're gonna wanna use something on the bottom if it's a sunny, calm day, because they're not gonna be as active, obviously. And I would use this right here. The biggest smallmouth I ever caught in my life was the 3rd week of March on this grub right here. It's a single tail 4-inch grub. And I've caught probably more fish on this than almost anything I've ever thrown. And that probably cost 10 cents. But it's a slow process. So on that bait right there, I put a 3/16 ounce head in this. So right there. Don't ever put your hooks in with your baits, okay? Unless they're in a package, because they will rust. Now, to rig one of these, you want the tail to go the opposite way as the hook, okay? You want the hook up, the tail down. The reason for that is when you cast it, it doesn't get hung up on the hook as much. If it's the other way, it's going to hit and hang up and you ruin the cast, okay? 3/16 ounce head, and as shallow as they're probably going to be, 8-pound fluorocarbon. Now, it's called scrubbing, and I've actually got a guide trip Friday, and I'll be doing that unless I see shad somewhere in the deeps. You just throw it out, and again, let the fish tell you their depth. Throw it out, let it go to the bottom with a spinning reel, and reel it back real slow. And then about every 5, 6, 7 cranks, you stop, let that settle back to the bottom, and then continue. It's a slow process, but it's very, very effective. The person in the back of the boat could do it at any point during the day, while the good person in the front's trying to catch them on a faster moving bait. But I swear by that bait, and a lot of people don't fish it anymore. They go with swim baits and that, but that bait right there will outfish at swim bait certain times of year, and that's the time of year, March 20th. That's the time of year. And at times, on those sunny, calm days, you're gonna have to back out. You're gonna have to back out to where you're actually casting and your bait is in 15 to 20 foot of water, okay? You're not casting up in 6, 8 foot of water, because bull shoals is gin clear. I mean, really clear. So let that bait go to the bottom, work it real, real slow back. You will feel a bite on these, okay? Because they have to kill a crawdad. On this right here, they'll hit it hard, okay? Any questions on that? And the other is the old puke tube. I talk about this all the time, but I really live by it. It's the do nothing bait. Use the small one. This is a teaser tube, not a tender tube. It's a teaser tube. It's 2 3/4 inches long. Put a 3/16 ounce head in it. Do the same thing, except you just drag it slow. You don't hop it, you don't do anything. You just drag it slow. The key is shelf rocks or big rocks and little bitty outcroppings or points that are close to spawning pockets. Do you know why a fish uses a place like that to spawn? The more you know about the fish, the better fisherman you're going to become. But if you go to fish for spawning fish, you're going to go to indentations in the bank. Some of them may look like a pond, half a pond. But do you know why the fish do that? It's because they're protected on 3 sides with their eggs, okay? They got this and they got this that they don't have to defend. They just got this. So that's why a lot of the fish don't spawn in just ledges. You know, you still have a few that do, don't get me wrong. But that's why they choose those inlets, those little indentations, because they don't have to protect as much, okay? Any questions on that? When you leave the Bull Shoals Marina, straight out in front is an island. And there's a cut through there at that island. Depending on the lake level, you shouldn't have any trouble cutting through that. But if you go to the left before you go to that island, I can't remember the name of the creeks, But if you'll do that, there's a lot of water back in there that has the banks I'm talking about, and get closer to the back than the front on these areas. So go closer to the back of the creek as opposed to the mouth of it, because these fish are moving, because the shad have moved, and because they're gonna spawn, okay? How many of y'all plan on using forward-facing sonar? Anybody?
Austin's got it on his boat.
This is probably one tournament where it won't be as needed. I have them on mine too, and it's amazing. It ain't cheating, but it's close, you know? But this is one of those cases where you may or may not need that. But I would pan out while they're going down the bank, especially if you're back in a creek. And I would pan out to that creek gut, because if you see balls of shad back out there, you know, you need to get off the bank and get out there and then do whatever you do. You know, ice bait, Dominique Rig. Anybody ever use a Dominique Rig? Well, you better learn it, because this year that's probably going to be the most heard about bait on Table Rock and Bull Shoal is a Dominique Rig. In that oak tournament down there, I think 2 people in the top 10 caught them on crankbaits, and all the rest caught them on Dominique. This is a Dominique rig. It's just a do-nothing bait, really. It really is, and it's just a jig head with a minnow behind it. Okay, this is the one I choose. I've had success with this and with your live target or even your 2D sonar. You just get over the fish and you just present it in a horizontal, and you just shake it like a drop shot. Then you stop, you shake it like a drop shot. And as much as I like using an ice bait, I've found that this thing will outperform it. And that's saying a lot. But this is a do-nothing bait. This particular bait here is a ghost minnow. It's made by Live Target, not sponsored by them. I use it on a spinning rod. I put a leader up here. That leader's for one thing, and that's just to prevent line twist, because it's a swivel. Otherwise, this thing spins when it goes down, and then you got issues down here, especially if you don't have braid on. But that's a Dominique rig. Relatively inexpensive.
What kind of head is that?
That right there is called a hot skirt. It's made by VMC. It comes with a hair jig behind it, and I cut the hair off of it.
Oh, okay.
And because of where the eye is on this head, being on top of it as opposed to on the front, that vertical presentation, it, you know, when it's in the water, it doesn't set like this because you're tied to the front. This, it keeps more of a pattern like this. That's why I chose this. And it's even in toward the back of the top as opposed to the front. So it's called a hot skirt. It's made by VMC. And it is a, I can't remember what it is. This particular one here, I think it's 3/8, because I was 80 to 90 foot catching them then. So, but you won't be doing that March 20th. Any questions on Bull Shoals? Okay. You guys have got a tournament the first weekend in May on Table Rock. That usually is the week that I get booked a year in advance, because everybody knows that's big smallmouth week. And so you guys are gonna have a ton of big smallmouth weighed in. And this puke tube is the #1 bait. And at that point in time, the fish will be heavy on their beds, and it's so easy to find these fish for a 2 to 3 week period. And that's why that's why I love guiding, because there's no searching at all, because the fish are doing what they have to do. They're gonna spawn, and I know right where that is. And so do most of the other guys. You're gonna go to those little indentations. You're gonna put the boat in 25 foot, and you're gonna cast that bait in the spawning pockets. That's the only bait you need. I'm telling you. You can throw in that rig if you want. It'll work. but that tube will catch more fish than anything you can put out there. And you'll catch some nice smallmouth. Very rarely on that week do we go out without catching at least 1 3 or 4 pound smallmouth, almost always. The biggest I've caught was, like I said, in March on that other bait, and it was a 6.6. It's on my wall. That's how that little bitty bait catches big fish. Just key on the small indentations in March. It's really simple. And I don't put a jerk bait down until the first day of June. So if you got wind in those spawning pockets, you can throw that jerk bait up there and work it really fast in those spawning areas, and they'll clobber it if you got wind. And it's a faster way to fish. And then you can always back it up with that tube. 3/16 ounce with an 8 pound fluorocarbon. Okay?
What about a jig?
Jig, you never go wrong with a jig. You know that. You don't go wrong. You know, the best jig, and I'm not sponsored by them. I say I'm not. He gives me product if I want it, but I don't ever ask, is the Jewel. I just had so much luck with his little
Inspired
finesse, that new finesse football jig. I just love that thing. And you can just drag them too. You absolutely can. I seem to catch more fish on this tube. I don't know why. It may be just me. Confidence. The very small profile is the key. And when you get a bite in the springtime, when you get a bite on the springtime on these spawning pockets, majority of them are pea gravel. They're little bitty gravel. When you get a bite on them, do not wait, because they will take a bait, a tube bait, which imitates crawdad, and it immediately goes into their crushers in the back, and they kill it, okay? And then you dehook that fish. So the second you feel a bite, do not let them have it, don't do anything. Just set the hook immediately. So that's all I would have. I would have this one box and a jerkbait box in my boat if I was fishing that in May. I think you're gonna have a lot of people throwing swim baits and that. I think you'll see a lot of that, but I think you can win it.
Any particular color on that little 4-inch grub?
Yeah, it's called copper, smoked copper red flake. Smoked copper red flake. And it's been a secret by the guides down there for quite a while until some of us had bigger mouths than we should have had. But that's the 4-inch. Now, if you're fishing for suspended fish, you know, we use a shad color of some kind, but that on the bottom, 3/16 head is what I use. Any of you guys, so you guys are going out of basically the Indian Point area in May. Yeah, you don't need to go anywhere. There's more banks that are like that spawning areas in that area than anywhere on the lake. It's got more indentations, more pea gravel than anywhere on the lake. So if it was me, I would stay between 0.7 and the Long Creek Bridge. That's where I would stay. And just hit those little indentations.
I'm sorry, the color of that grub was what again?
It's called Smoke Copper Red Flake. And it is a Bass Pro grub.
Okay, thanks.
Tim Sonato and me and Eric Prey, all of us, that's what we use. Now, the other guys, they're gonna tell you they use something else because they're sponsored by somebody else.
Yeah.
One of them deals. And it doesn't matter who makes the grub, they're all about the same. I think the 4-inch has a lot to do with it, and I do think that color helps. Any questions on bull shoals or table rock? No? Well, I don't know what else I can do then.
We appreciate you coming up and giving us your tips and tricks.
Yep. You need to get down to bull shoals but you don't want to go down too early to pre-fish down there, because that's the time of year when things change more quickly in a shorter period of time. As you know how quick the water temperature can raise that time of year. So I would go down like the weekend before, and you'll have a pretty good idea. So that's going to put you down there about the 13th of March. Yeah. So you're not going to see a lot of difference in that. And hopefully you don't have a flood.
Yeah.
So hopefully. I was telling him earlier, I fished a tournament, a Central Pro-Am down there, and won it. It was 37 foot high. And at the Bull Shoals Marina, you'll appreciate it when you see it. We were all tied up to light poles in the parking lot. You know, it's just 37 foot high. You just can't imagine that. You can't even imagine. It's a whole different lake.
That's about all it can take, isn't it?
Yeah, I think. I mean, if you've been there, we were actually launching at the mechanic building up top. That's where we were launching up there. Yeah, it was amazing. And you talk about a workout for that family, just moving all those massive docks and I don't know how many feet of runway they had, but they'll do it. I mean, they're the hardest working group I've ever seen. They're good people down there.
And Kerry, do we have slips with our?
Yes, I did call back in there. We do have slips with power.
Good, great.
And you've all requested slips,
Yes.
okay? Because if you don't, they won't give you one.
Yeah, I told them I needed at least 4, so.
Okay. Well, you're gonna be staying at the top of the hill, that motel up there. I've
It's
stayed
a
there.
lighthouse or something like that's where we're.
Yeah, it's the top. It's the top of the hill. It's just right up above where it is. Pretty old motel, really old motel. But I mean, it was about what you'd expect at Bull Shoals. But it did have a full kitchen. It had a walk through to the next room, and that room didn't have anything in it except toilet and beds. So, you know, you want to make sure that on that, you want to make sure you can get a room where you have a full kitchen.
Yeah, like all these got like kitchenettes in them. Those ones we got.
In your good shape, yeah. Now, you're not